We finally hit that big milestone, starting our brand new Cummins 6.7s. And wow, you guys had questions. Why didn't they fire up the first time? Was it air in the fuel system or something worse? Was our oil pump toast? Are we really running automotive transmissions in a 78-foot boat? And why in the world did one engine tune work perfectly while the other didn't? Then there's a question that split the comments wide open. Mechanical versus electronic engines. Which is better? And which will we choose again? Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's question and answer on starting our engines for the first time. I know it was a long time coming. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We are coming to you from beautiful Ocean Falls, British Columbia. This is a mostly abandoned town that's got great things to explore. So we're going to check that out. If you're interested in that, check out our Exploring the World Onboard Tangaroa channel. You'll find all of that there. Let's get to the questions. Okay, first question up we've got from Captain Larry P. Was it just air in the fuel system? I had a 5.9 that was doing the same thing until I got all the air out of the fuel system. In this particular case, it was not. It ended up just being a simple calibration issue. I was under the impression that the base map was fully configured for everything triggering wise, which means the inputs from the cam and crank sensors, and unfortunately, one of those was not. And the reason it took me so long to find it, and it was so frustrating, is because I assumed it was correct from the base map. So easy fix. Once I got that sorted, fired up perfectly every time, and still does. Next question up we've got from Kinsiler 9208. Blaine, be honest now, does Janus emissions really smell like diesel exhaust? LOL. I'm so glad you got it running. Sometimes you just have to talk nice to it, pet it, and stroke it to get it to come around. As everyone knows that is married or has a girlfriend, women's emissions are always flowers and fresh spring. There's no diesel smell to that. Next question we've got from Doug Kirby 4709. He says, hi, which episode covers the installation of the coolant expansion tank, please? I bought a tank that looks a lot like yours to put on my 6 BTA that came from the factory with an expansion tank system, and I'm keen to see how you did yours before I do mine. Thanks, Doug. Doug, that is episode 33, and just looking on my phone here, in the actual thumbnail it says eBay no returns, and the title is How We Build a Marine Cooling System for Our Cummins Truck Engines. So hopefully you can find that, and hopefully it answers the questions that you're after. RVing since 2016 asked, I'm really glad it finally started. I must have missed something, but was the oil pump bad, or did you disassemble it so you could use it to prime, or both? The pump ended up seeming that it was bad. I didn't disassemble it to measure all the clearances inside. I just bought a new pump. But what I did do is I cut off the idler gear on the original pump, and that's what I used to prime the system with. So I actually destructively modified the original pump and primed the system with that. So that actually worked out really well. Next question up is from Madman Marine. Wait, did I understand right? Are you running automotive transmissions? All I heard was something about shifting gears at the same time, which to me says you have more than one ratio at your disposal. No, not one ratio. Two directions, forward and reverse. So they're just standard marine transmissions. They're just electronic solenoid shift, not mechanical shift. So the gears that I'm referring to are simply forward and reverse. Now I can't confirm or deny this, but I have heard mumblings, rumors, read something about the fact that ZF or Twin Disc, one of the manufacturers, did make a 2-speed forward gear on some of their transmissions. I think they were military use, but I cannot confirm that. Possible. Next question up is from Richard Sergo. He asks, why did one tune work on one motor and not the other? As far as the motor is concerned, they would run on the same tune. There's no difference between the two sides as far as the engine. The difference is in my shifters. Being I've got the two shifters and they're back to back, the throttle position sensor on one side is mounted in reverse, I guess you could say. So the sweep on that sensor is different between forward and reverse, because it actually, when you look in the inside of those shifter mechanisms, obviously they go one direction when you're in forward, they go the other direction when you're in reverse, and that swing of that arm has got a different ratio to it depending on if it's forward and reverse. And being they're mounted face-to-face mirrored from each other, one is always on the reverse ratio and one's on the forward ratio, and then vice versa when you shift the gears the opposite way. So unfortunately, that sweep on the voltage for my throttle demand does not match up from one side to the other. So there has to be a very mild difference between the two tunes for that. There's also a little bit with the forward and reverse shifting of the transmissions, which I could theoretically get the same, where I could use the same tune file on that, but they've got to be separate anyway, so I left them as is. We got a question again from Andy Guest, 6543. What was the issue with the engine not starting? Was it lack of fuel, incorrect sensor type, timing, etc.? I did answer this briefly before, but I'll go a little bit more into detail on it. On the electronic engines, you have two sensors that basically tell the engine management where the engine is. You've got a crankshaft sensor and a camshaft sensor. Crankshaft sensor just basically tells the ECU where the piston is in relation to the bore. It lets the engine know how many degrees before top dead center you are, so it knows when to fire the injectors in relation to that cycle. However, it can't tell the ECU what cycle the engine is on, because obviously you've got a top dead center at exhaust, you've got a top dead center at compression. The camshaft sensor is what does that. It pulls that data in because it's spinning half the speed of the crankshaft, so it can actually give that data to the ECU to let the ECU know what cycle you're on. And unfortunately, in the base file that I had received, there was a incorrect setting in there. And unfortunately, I assumed everything was correct in there, so I didn't pick up on it right away. However, a quick settings change on the triggering system for the camshaft, they start perfectly every time now. Got a question comment from Apex Master 40. You should be lubing oil pump with oil, not Vaseline. The oil pump runs oil through it, not Vaseline. Have you checked the gap on the oil pump? These motors are bulletproof. Yes, I'm aware that the engine runs oil. However, on fresh engines, when you're trying to prime that, a lot of times it just works quicker if you can get a thicker fluid in there. Usually I use assembly lube, and I've never had an issue with it in the past. For whatever the reason, that was not happening this time. I didn't fully disassemble the pump. These were fairly low mile motors. I did visually inspect, looking into the gerotor pump. Didn't see any scoring, anything like that, so I went with them. Bit of a lazy thing on my part. I do regret it now. However, new pump in there, primed with, I think at that point I did prime it with assembly lube and worked perfectly. So for whatever the reason, that original pump just wasn't cutting it. Next question up is from Antonio Braga, 8305. At last, well done. Now please jot down your secret onto a 500-page thesis and upload it to our CS server. Jokes, relax there. Very well done. Would like to know what was wrong, pray tell. So I answered that in the last question, so hopefully that made sense. And then he also asks, because I did reply to that in the comments as well, and he says, what are the chances we can have a copy of the base file, maybe from a Google Drive link download? What say you, please? I could probably do something like that. I'll have to figure that out. I've got so many files that I've done revision after revision on those already. I'm sure I could post one of them up so you could check it out and see what I've done in there. Okay, next question up is from Jet Driver. So what are the reasons it would not fire in the end? It's not like you have some radical engine tube or something like that. You'd think a standard map would work fine. As I said in the last comments, yeah, they're not special engines. They should work just fine on the base map. And unfortunately, this is one of the issues with working off of a base map that you haven't created yourself. I received this base map from another gentleman, and it was actually pretty good, but the main reason why I got the base map from someone else is more for the diesel aspect of things. They had all of the settings for the injectors already set up in there, because I've got no experience with Cummins injectors in particular. The common rails require several settings that are critical for proper function, and I had no info on that, so I did depend on that, and I just assumed that everything in that file would be correct. However, it didn't seem to be. I don't know if maybe it was a previous revision that had been changed out. When you're a tuner, you end up having so many files, unless you're making lots of notes on the file titles, it's hard to know which one. And I might have just gotten one of his earlier files and he just didn't realize. I don't know. But for whatever the reason, it was an easy fix, and no harm, no foul. Okay. Thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. We're going to get to the question of the day, but I want to kind of address several questions that came in, or comments more along the lines. What I find is that a lot of the guys that are really comfortable with mechanical diesels, they tend to have a little bit of a distaste for electronic engines. They know the mechanical diesels, and there are lots of things to be said for them, but they tend to want to grab at things that have happened. So for this example, we got several comments about, oh, this is why I hate ECUs and this and that. Well, the issue that I was having getting these engines started had really nothing to do per se with the ECU. It had nothing to do with the quality of the ECU, had nothing to do with the ECU being able to reliably do what it was made to do. It was programming. And these aren't issues that you run into typically when you're buying a ready-made engine. They've already got all this stuff nailed down. And even for us, now that we've gotten all that sorted, I think we're at coming up on 3,000 nautical miles with these engines with zero other issues. Well, save one, which you'll see in the next video. Zero other issues with anything electronic related on this motor. They have performed flawlessly. I have been super happy with everything. So yeah, this problem wasn't an electronic engine related problem. It was a tuning related problem, and it was very easy to resolve. But on that, and we'll get to the comment of the day here, Lee Oldershaw 956 had commented about the reliability lacking in electronic engines, and that electronic engines had spoiled the reliability of the diesel engine. And I had commented back that, you know, there may be a minor decrease in reliability, but there was also a lot of benefits that you get from electronic engines. So hence to the question, what are the benefits? You have to have electricity for them to run, not just start. Many small diesels have had compression releases and could be hand cranked. Boat electronics are getting better, but having the diesel rely on software and computers is not good. Look at these huge container ships losing propulsion and steering and having collisions. Good luck with your new engines. I'm a very old retired EE airline captain and U.S. Coast Guard licensed 100-ton master and lifetime recreational sailor that drives a Tesla now. Well, the Tesla should actually be a pretty good example. You know, those are immense amount of electronics in those cars. And on a typical sense, they're pretty reliable. But back to the marine side of things, the benefits of the common rail diesel engine. For starters, combustion efficiency. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, the old mechanical diesels had better fuel consumption numbers. Emissions. It all comes down to emissions. There have been years of emissions regulations that have been placed on diesel engines. And the reason why they don't make as many mechanical diesel engines anymore is because they can't even meet emissions. The common rail diesels allow that. And part of the way that they do that is to inject more fuel at different places, add after treatments, add diesel particulate filters. All of that hurts economy. If you were to take a common rail diesel engine and strip it down to its bare essentials, get rid of pilot injection, get rid of post injection, I can almost guarantee that you would have a better fuel consumption number, probably not insubstantial, than the mechanical variants of that engine. So that would be a big one. On the side of that, you've got quieter engine running, you've got better diagnostic capability due to the amount of data that you can pull out of the engine. And when I say that, this ECU has got the ability to tell you contribution of each individual cylinder. So if you have one cylinder that's having a problem, say you've got a valve out of adjustment or an injector that's failing, you can see that in the software. You don't have to try to figure it out like you would on a mechanical diesel engine. You can see right on the data coming from the ECU if you have a cylinder that's not performing. So that's a big benefit. Other things, I guess, simplicity of plumbing. You don't have multiple convoluted injector lines. That's a minimal one. You don't have to mess with pump timing. It's all laptop. You're clean. Changing a high pressure pump super quick and easy. those are all good benefits. For me, integration, having the electronic engine allows me to integrate it in with multiple systems on the boat. My engine room ventilation fans, my gauges on my dash, my NEMA 2000 system if I so desired. This is all stuff that I can do really easily with that setup. So there's lots of benefits. Another one would be, you know, these new common rail diesel engines coming from the factory in the marine aspects. They're doing up to 500, 550 horsepower diesel engines, which they never offered, as far as I know, in the mechanical variants. And the reason for that is with pilot injection, they have been able to tame down the combustion event where it is considerably less aggressive. You don't get a big injection spike, and that's that diesel rattle you hear, and that's what they've gotten rid of with the common rail engines. And being they've been able to tame down that combustion event where it's doesn't have as much of an impact, you have a better longevity. You're not putting as much abuse on your internal components, so they can increase the power levels safely. These are all benefits. And like I said, in my personal opinion, the benefits are worth the drawbacks. I mean, we're talking pretty minor reductions in reliability. They're still incredibly reliable engines. I mean, the QSB 550, the QSB 400s, they're still known to be very reliable. They've got a great record. Do they have issues? Sure. Everything will have an issue at some point. Do they have more than a mechanical diesel? Probably. There is more stuff there, but it's minimal. And I am of the firm belief that the benefits are completely worth the drawbacks. Thanks so much for joining this week, guys. Next week, we're going to be doing a little bit more on what happened after we got the engine started, doing all the break-in and our sea trial. So stay tuned. Check it out.
If you missed the start of this whole adventure, we put every single repower video, start to finish, in one playlist so you can binge the entire journey. You'll see every win, every snag, and exactly how we got these Cummins 6.7s into Tangaroa. And keep an eye on our website. Our live tracking map is coming soon, so you can follow us in real time, wherever we go.